What's up, BookTube? It's Monty. Today I'm here to talk about Children of Virtue and Vengeance. I keep wanting to, flip it. It's not flipped. It's Virtue and then Vengeance. I before E. I don't want to be that person that says if you haven't read this, leave now, come back. Eventually, I know I'm going to get into spoilers. I'll put a thing up on the screen so you'll know when it's time to leave. I don't think there's anything meaningful that I can say about this if you have not read Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. This is the first book. But Children of Blood and Bone was one of my favorite reads of 2018. I read it in May. I have a video. I'll leave it linked up in the cards. And I love it. I love it. I recently, it just come to my attention that everyone loves this book. I kind of wanted to talk about this first book for a moment. And it's that I think that since this has come out, obviously, reaction has been mixed. I think this was a very hyped book, not even just on BookTube, but in the general internet. But since this has come out, I think that everyone has started to voice criticisms of the book, which is fine. I don't think this book is beyond criticism. I do think that the romance it feels out of place in the narrative. I think that it is a little jarring. It's not the most well implemented thing. But in the time since, I think that people have really just settled on, well, it was, a black fantasy and YA, and that was kind of the appeal, that was kind of the hype, and everything else is kind of mediocre. And I just want to say that the fantasy world that Tomi Adeyemi weaves in Children of Blood and Bone, based on Nigeria, using a Nigerian mythos, the culture, is on par with what any of your white faves are doing, and is in a lot of cases superior to what they are doing. It just is. I'm sorry. In my experience, now we all know that I do not read a ton of fantasy. I did spend some time this year reading some backlist titles, reading some frontlist titles. But Children, Blood, and Bone is out here on par with... just out here surpassing the game. I don't think that in terms of its plot, it's revolutionary, but I don't think that any of the YA fantasy staples that we are out here talking about that have these cult-like fan bases are revolutionizing the plot game. They're just not. They aren't. They're not revolutionizing the plot game. They're not revolutionizing the character game. They just kind of... That's where I sit on it. So I don't... And I think that the idea that the book needed to be somehow the most original thing under the sun and change the game in every kind of way is a lot to ask of a debut. And this is an excellent debut. There are definitely issues with it, and there are some criticisms that I'm willing to entertain, but I do, at the end of the day, say that if you have not picked up Children of Blood and Bone, you are doing yourself a great disservice, because it's a great book. With that little diatribe out of the way, let's talk about the things I can say about Children of Virtue and Vengeance before I get into spoilers. I think that this book went in a direction that I did not entirely foresee. There were elements at the beginning where I was like, okay, yes, we're doing this. This is what I thought we were going to do. And then you get 50 pages in, and you're like, okay, plot twist, we're still doing the thing, but it's completely unlike anything I would have ever imagined or pictured. And I loved it. I think that the character connections in this novel were fleshed out in a way that, again, your faves are not doing. There were internal conflicts with every character. There were external conflicts. There was always something to push the plot forward, and none of it ever felt gimmicky or well, okay, sure. I think that Tomi Adeyemi crafted a narrative that I wanted to see through. She built a world that I wanted to stay in, and she utilized that, and it was great. It was great. It was so great. It was just beautifully done. We get to see more of the other Magi clans. Children of Blood and Bone were with Zaylee, and Zaylee's a Reaper, so we get to see Reaper magic. But here we get to see some other clans, and we get to see them shine and do things, and there's so many of them. And it really just... it made my heart sing. There is definitely... an overarching plot that we're on, right? There is a final destination that all of the things are moving toward, but I do think that it is very character driven, and that we do spend a lot of time with Zaylee. We spend a lot of time with Amari, and we get to see them actively working toward this goal, and all of the sort of plottish, like the plot points along the way are really character. It's the perfect balance between character driven and like a plot driven story. They both service each other in a way that I think is great. This is hands down my favorite release of the year. I cannot imagine a book that I have read that is better than this one this year. I can't think of a second book in a series that is better than this book right here. And now that I've rambled on for like 5-ish minutes, I'm gonna go into some spoilers, I think. So I'm gonna set this down. If you haven't read this, if you don't want to be spoiled, we're gonna go. Because I want to have an in-depth discussion. But first, I think my tea is finally cold enough to drink, so let's do it. So, Children of Virtue and Vengeance takes place relatively soon after the events of the first novel, Children of Blood and Bone. We have Zaylee and Amari, and Zaylee's brother. I pronounce it Tizane, but I know that's like, it's not how you pronounce it. They're on a ship, they're going back to the kingdom, they're going back to the capital. And they're gonna, Amari is ready to take the throne and lead the kingdom of Orisha into, I guess, the queendom of Orisha into a new age. And when they get there, plot twist, the queen mother is not dead. They attack our heroes. Queen mother attacks our heroes. And we learn that that Amari was definitely not the only member of the royal family. I mean, Anon got magic in the first book, but he was run through with a sword. But the queen mother, Amari's mom, is also wielding magic, and her magic is like nothing we have seen before. And so our heroes have to, regroup, restructure, and then we get to run into an old frave in Mama Agba. And when Mama Agba showed up, I was so happy. Like, you can't understand how happy it was. I didn't really think she was going to play into the story here, but she does. And so for most of our book, our characters are in an ancient Magi temple in the mountains, studying their craft, preparing a plan to get Amari on the throne. Because, again, we're deep into spoilers now. But Anon was not dead. He got run through with a sword, but that did not mean the boy was dead. And I was kind of actually upset at the beginning when I found out that he was alive, because I did not like the Anon-Zaylee relationship. If you watch my Children of Blood and Bone review, I was not here for it. I didn't appreciate it at all, and that's because I ship Zaylee and Amari. I think that they're just the perfect ship. It's just what the story wants. And there were breadcrumbs in Children of Virtue and Vengeance where Amari was talking about how her heart longed for Zaylee and how she loved Zaylee. And then at the end, we're going to go in order though, but Anon wasn't dead. And so we're plotting on how we're going to deal with Amari's mom, who was a powerful magic wielder. Like, they have never seen anybody do what her mom did. And also get Amari on the throne, but now we also have to deal with the fact that Anon isn't dead and Zaylee is ready to kill this bitch. And along the way, most of it is really Zaylee and Amari butting heads. They are definitely, I don't want to say diametrically opposed, because I don't think that that's entirely the case, but you can definitely, over the course of the novel, you can see that what their end goals are kind of at odds with each other. And so, in a way, you are kind of waiting for one of them to just blatantly betray the other. And that's really hard. It's hard to think about that happening, because in Children of Blood and Bone, you spent, 500 pages with these characters, and you saw them you get close, and if you're like me, you think Amari is in love with Zaylee, and the text is kind of giving you these moments where, like, maybe that's gonna happen and they're gonna do it. But then there's also moments where, like, Amari's getting wet for Zaylee's brother, so you're like, okay, you can't fuck both of them. Like, I mean, you can do whatever you want. You're calling yourself Queen Amari, but I do think that It was interesting, and I did think that the plot did a really good job of playing up events that supported Zaylee's path forward and Amari's path forward. And I appreciated that. I think that it was kind of like a chicken or the egg situation. And it was like, okay, well, if you guys hadn't done what you did, would that still be the outcome? Can you really trust this person? But at the end of the day, I did think that Zaylee was right about Anon. And that Anon, in his heart, he is a decent person, but he's easily swayed. And so while he might want to do the right thing, when it comes down to it, you cannot trust him because he will not do what is in your interest. He will always do what is in Anon's interest. And so when the story culminated in the way that it did, I was just like, you know what, Zaylee, you were right. You called it. I was boo-boo the fool. I was with Amari on this one. I mean, I didn't really think that we could really achieve peace. I think that Tomi Adeyemi does a really great thing where we know that the Magi and the royal family have been at odds for hundreds of years. And I feel like we were able to see it played out in the present and when we had Anon's chapters. So for that, I think it was really a great time. And we also got to see a glimpse into Amari's mom. I can't pronounce that woman's name, I'm sorry. I know it starts with a Z. I think it's like Zahada. I don't think that's right, though. But it was Amari's mom. Using these prejudices to stoke the flames of what, our current situation, I thought was a really interesting take. And you could never count her out. Every time we thought Amari's mom was out for the count, like every time we thought they had her, she was always, like, she was 3 steps ahead. Like, Amari and Zaylee were playing fucking checkers, and the queen was out here playing chess. And she delivered. She delivered antagonist in the way that I think everyone loves a good antagonist. Like, I wanted to hate this woman so badly, but her game was next level. She was next leveling these children. She was like, you are children, literal children. And I liked that. I liked the sense that the story was building toward, Zaylee freeing not only her people, but everyone. Well, she hasn't been trying to free everyone. But I liked this idea that our heroes, who are obviously younger, were freeing the country, right? They were, and I liked, well, I'll get back to that, but they were they were going to overthrow the government. And then at the end, it was just pulled out from under them. It was like, you really thought you were going to master this grown person. And at the end of the day, do I think that young people have the power to do that? Sure, of course. I'm not out here like young people are stupid, like you can't overthrow a government. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. But I liked that it's still, I liked that Tomi didn't, like, cartoonize the adult figures that we had here. And in that same vein, as part of the same storyline, I liked that Zaylee was looking at this with a realistic perspective, right? Like, Zaylee was looking at this like, the Magi are clearly outnumbered. Amari's mom is doing some next level bullshit that we can't really handle right now. And at the end of the day, is it more important to win, to just be victorious, or is it more important to live, Like, we finally have our magic back. Is it better to take our magic and go somewhere? And there was a moment in the book where the rest of the Magi and the sacred temple were like, you know what, that's a really good point, Zaylee. Like, maybe we should live. And then I felt that Amari countered it really well. I don't know if she was the person that should have been doing the countering, but when Amari was like, is it enough to live if you have to, like, live with the fact that these people have taken everything from you? And, that was really valid. The Magi had suffered a lot in Orisha, and, like, was it fair to expect them to just leave, like, their home? Like, that's not I thought that was a really valid conversation to have. I also really appreciated the commentary on how, I mean, do I think that the quest for power is going to corrupt you inherently? No, but I liked the commentary it did in terms of Amari, who was always working toward doing what she thought was right. In her mind, she was always doing what is best for the people. Like, every time she was doing something, it was, you can think just about the Magi, Zaylee, but I have to think about everyone. And so, at the end of the book, when Amari decided that she was going to gas the village to kill her mom and to kill her brother in order to end it, I thought that was... I didn't really agree with that choice. I thought that was kind of a questionable decision on her part. But I respected it because I felt that that was where the book had been building toward, right? I thought it was a powerful moment in the book. And then when she got there and she realized that she had killed all of those people in vain, that was crushing. I felt that in a way that I rarely do. Like, the ending of this book, the last third of this book, the final act, masterfully done. What I appreciated the most about this was I was able to connect with all of these things. Like, when Zaylee was getting to the temple and she saw all of the Magi clans, and they were talking about how the Magi had surrounded Lagos on the night of the like when they were doing the ceremony to bring back magic, and then they didn't have the magic yet, but all of these people had believed that she was going to be able to do it, and then on that night they attacked Lagos. Oh my, that was some, like, again, that was another really powerful moment, and it didn't, I mean, you could see all of these people looking to Zaylee as this, like, larger than life entity. But Zaylee is over here like, that's not me. Like, that's not who I am. Like, I am just like, oh, it was so good. The part that really killed me was, so when, at the end of the novel, Amari has failed. There's only one solution, right? So their only way they can make this happen now is if all of the Magi become connected. And in order for them to come connected, there has to be a sacrifice. Like, you can't just do this, like, grand magic and not pay some kind. I don't really like I really don't like that magic is coming with a price. I feel like that's just... I don't know. It just takes it to a place that I don't really care for. It's just not it's not what I care about. But for whatever, like, it worked for me in the context of this book, right? The journey that we had gone on, I understood that this is what we were doing. This is where we were at. Like, this wasn't something I could change. And when Amari was like, Zaylee, you have to kill me, because it has to be someone you love. Again, I was like, see, y'all girlfriends. But I was also just, like, really crushed, because I was like, Zaylee has to do this. Like, Amari is right. Like, Amari had gone too far in her quest for power. She realized that. And that her goal was still the same in that moment when she was offering that up, because her goal hadn't changed. Her goal was still to save everyone. And when she realized that to save everyone, I mean, again, like, I don't know if we want to, like, I guess it kind of gets into, like, a gray area, like, suicidal ideation point. I could see how that could be an issue. But in the context of the story, that's not what it was. I'm not going to have that discussion. I'm not qualified to have that discussion. I can see how it could go. I can see how it could get interpreted that way. But that's not how I took it. It's not how I took it. But her goal was still the same. Her goal was still to save everyone. And she realized the error of her ways. And she was ready to do whatever it meant for her to be able to do that. Amari is still my fucking queen. I know the Anon technically abolished the monarchy or whatever, but still my queen. Then, when Mama Agba showed up and was like, no, Amari, your role in this is not over. Because, Mama Agba's a seer, so she knows the future and shit. And she was willing to make the sacrifice. I was like, it was, again, a really powerful moment. It was just, it gutted me. But I think by far and away my favorite moment of the book was the epilogue. And when we got that allusion to a slave ship, the end of the last chapter, they were kidnapped and then they woke up on board a ship in the middle of the sea and they didn't know where they were going. After they had already been in this fictionalized Nigerian inspired place, I think that the only thing you can really like, you're waking up on a slave ship. Maybe it was wild to me. I mean, I don't think that's where the book is going. I don't think that's where the third one is going. But the imagery there, your faves could never. It gutted me. It shredded me, especially after the events of the last chapter, where again we were ending on what was meant, like we were literally a sentence away from triumph and like, let's throw out the banners, guys, and start throwing the confetti. But again, it was realizing the situation where good things happen in these characters' lives that are immediately undercut by some kind of tragic event. And in this case, it was getting gassed. Because again, the mother is out here playing fucking chess, and these people are out here playing checkers. Like, they thought they had, some minor victories. Anon abolished the monarchy, and then Zaylee got her revenge, or her justice, and she sucked the life force out of Anon, who was there to give it willingly. But it did, at the end of the day, that wasn't enough to stop anybody. Even the fact that they had, all the Magi had banded together and they were working in tandem doing things that no Magi had ever done. Again, it was just, this book did so many things that I am in shock, honestly. I have never felt more invested in characters. I have never appreciated a sequel quite as much. I think that I read a lot of lackluster sequels this year. But I think what this book has in common with the ones that I did appreciate were, it was a continuation of character building. We didn't just leave them where they were in book one, push them forward through a plot, have them experience all of these traumas and not have to grapple with any of that. I think Children of Virtue and Vengeance, we spend a lot of the time, dealing with the traumas of Children of Blood and Bone, of dealing with the consequences of those decisions, of trying to make new decisions, of learning all of these new things that we have. It was just... And then not only was it that, but it was other characters using what they knew about these other characters, the things that they had gone through, in order to make decisions about what to do next. It was so multifaceted that it was honestly the best sequel. Like, it just was. So at the end of the day, I think Children of Virtue and Vengeance was out here doing things that I think are far better than what a lot of other authors are out here doing. This book touched me in such a way that I did not expect. But I don't think I could have anticipated appreciating it this much, because I could not have expected the twists and the turns and the journey these characters are going to take me on. And so, if you have not read this book, for whatever fucking reason, if you haven't read either of them, obviously, because I know some people still haven't read Children of Blood and Bone, I would highly implore you to do so. I cannot imagine regretting this decision, but, obviously I'm wrong, because we started off this video talking about the Blood and Bone backlash, so it's not like you would be alone if you didn't appreciate these things, but I personally have never fucked harder with the fantasy series. Like, it's just... This is my series, and I think that the younger Monty would have really... I would have loved this series as a kid, and I love it as an adult. Go read these. Come back, chat with me about it. It's all I'm going to be talking about for the rest of the year. This book just blew up all of my end of the year lists. My end of the year lists I thought were set, and I've just been out here reading things, and my lists are getting blown up left and right. And so, if you do not read this book by the end of the year, I kind of get it. The holidays are coming up. Fine. But do not let this be a book that you do not experience. You need this experience in your life. And with that, I'm going to go. I've rambled on for like damn near an hour at this point, so I don't want to keep talking. If you read it, let me know what you think in the comment section below. If you liked what you saw here, I have a whole bunch more videos you can watch. If this is not the first video you've watched of me, then you might as well press the subscribe button. You keep coming back for something. But I'll see you guys on my next video whenever that happens to be. But until then, bye.